Hey there, Troop TT! Welcome back to the dullest channel on the entire interwebs. Dull? Yes, because everybody that we talk about on here is probably one of the dullest people. I know for a fact that all of you love Florida Man. But why? Why is he Florida Man? Well, in this video, I'm going to be sharing with you 10 headlines straight from Florida that perfectly describe why Florida Man is Florida Man. Or woman, sometimes. Top 10 Florida Man headlines, here we come. From a man making the worst Segway to another man blowing up his house for a laugh. I am proud to introduce you to 10 of Florida's not-so-finest. Alrighty, we are live in 3, 2... DUIs can be such a drag. So why not make them more interesting? Like Andy decided to do. I'm sure you've heard about driving while intoxicated on a horse, on a tractor, a bike, heck, even a riding lawnmower. But what about a Segway? Poor Andy found this out the hard way when he decided to hop on a Segway one night, while also just so happening to be extremely intoxicated, to the point where driving anything was probably not the greatest of ideas. And where exactly did Andy go on his Segway adventure? Well, he drove to the worst place a person could ever drive while intoxicated. Right smack dab in front of the police station. Officers saw Andy on his joyride in the street, and due to the fact that he was swerving in and out of traffic and struggling to stay upright, they decided to have a little chat with him. Upon approaching him, they smelled alcohol on his breath, and Andy was also kind enough to tell the officers that he had drank 2 whole bottles of wine prior to his booze cruise. He was then arrested, and after breath samples were taken, it was confirmed that Andy was nearly 3 times over the legal limit. But it honestly doesn't sound like Andy even cared. The real question? Did they let him ride his Segway home after he was released? There may be nothing worse than wanting to knock back a few drinks and having no one to do it with. Or even worse, you have a drinking buddy and it's just the 2 of you. Timothy and Noah were facing this very problem one day. They had both enjoyed a few nice cold beers and then the hunt began. At some point, Noah found the perfect drinking buddy, an alligator. Nothing screams, "Let's get drunk together," quite like an alligator. After catching the alligator, they decided it was time for the alligator to get on the same level as these 2 boneheads, meaning he was entirely too sober to be any drinking buddy of theirs. That is when they started to share their beers with the alligator, and what a task it was turning out to be. At one point, the alligator must have had enough of all the nonsense because he bit Timothy. Oh, and to top it off, they had been recording the whole thing. Eventually, the duo gave up all hope on ever being bona fide drinking buddies with the alligator, and they released him, unharmed, but slightly buzzed, back into the wild. Authorities were alerted to this ludicrous sight, and since the 2 had a video of it all, they were arrested. I wonder who they're gonna choose for their next drinking buddy adventure time. I've personally been there before. You need to get somewhere, and you have no ride. An easy solution to this is buying a car, or heck, even a bicycle would get the job done. Or simply hail a cab. These were all foreign ideas to Jonathan. He had a need. He needed to get to Hooters. Only problem was he had no way of getting there. So he did what anyone would do in this situation. He called 911. He told the dispatcher that his grandmother had just had a stroke. So crews arrived, and when they looked inside, they saw that Grandma was hunky-dory. They started asking questions. Mainly, why did Jonathan call for help when no one needed it? That very moment was when he decided to reveal his big idea. He asked authorities if he could have a ride to Hooters from them, and heck, he even offered to pay them for a ride. You know what this sounds vaguely like? A taxi cab. He called the police, but all he really needed was a cab. Weird. Of course, he was arrested for misusing 911, and I'm really hoping that at least one of the officers explained to him the whole taxi cab thing, and how simple it is to use it. All he had to do was dial a different number, and he would have successfully landed himself at Hooters and not in jail. Sometimes you just eat way too much food. You hit that point where everything hurts. Moving, breathing, swallowing, even just thinking is a struggle because you have just gorged yourself on a tasty meal. Mayeli was feeling a very similar way, only it wasn't his stomach being bloated from eating that was making him want to loosen his belt a few notches, although it was food related. See, Mayeli was dreaming of that stuffed feeling, only he needed to gather the right supplies first. He headed off to his local grocery store, and the shopping began. He found quite a meal, too. Some fried chicken, some ribs. Oh, and you can't forget the mashed potatoes. Mayeli entered the store without a basket or a cart. He brought his own bag, his pants. After finding everything he wanted, he began stuffing it all down his pants, mashed taters and all. At some point, Mayeli was caught, and when asked to remove the items from his pants, everyone that witnessed it was in complete shock that a man could fit so many food items down his pants. All in all, Mayeli had 9 pieces of fried chicken, 2 packages of hamburger buns, some mashed potatoes, and an entire rack of ribs all shoved down his pants. Instead of feasting that night, Mayeli was presented with a lovely prison dinner and some charges. I've heard of cooking ribs in the dishwasher, but in your pants? Have you ever seen a gymnast do their floor routine? It's captivating. All the leaps and flips they're able to do. Gianfranco was also a fan of gymnastics, only he preferred doing it himself than to watching a pro. One day, Gianfranco was hit with the urge to practice his floor routine, so he stopped, dead in his tracks, and decided to practice right there, in the middle of the road. He also happened to be blocking a truck from driving forward. Police caught wind of the free gymnastics show and headed straight to Gianfranco. When he said he would not leave, officers attempted to detain him. Gianfranco was a gymnast, a real and true gymnast. He wiggled free from the cops and then made his getaway in a way that only a true gymnast would. He began cartwheeling away from the officers. If I were one of those officers, I would have had the hardest time keeping my cool and not falling to the ground laughing hysterically. Somehow they kept it together, and since Gianfranco was unable to cartwheel very fast, maybe because he wasn't a real gymnast, or because he was well over 40, or maybe because he had been drinking. Whatever the real reason, his cartwheels were, let's say, below par, and the officers walked up to him and took him into custody. If I were to tell you that something was going to happen that could possibly damage your car if you didn't take preventative measures, wouldn't you do everything and anything possible to make sure your car stays free from damage? Patrick was in such a predicament. A hurricane was approaching and he knew that there was no way his car would come out of it unscathed if he left it in the street. He was actually worried that his car would just blow away. Then again, if I drove one of those tiny smart cars, I'd be nervous it would blow away if someone happened to sneeze near it. Patrick thought long and hard before making a final decision. Actually, there probably wasn't too much thinking going on. The hurricane was getting closer and it was time for the big move. Or should I say the tiny move, considering the size of the vehicle. Patrick walked into his kitchen/dining area and opened the French double doors all the way. He then walked outside, got in his car, and proceeded to drive the car into his kitchen. He then made sure his house was secure and sat, patiently awaiting the hurricane. Lucky for everyone in Florida that day, the more severe areas of the hurricane didn't even get to Florida. Patrick's car more than likely would have been A-okay, but he did get one heck of a story out of it. Who parks their car in the kitchen? Honestly. If you were walking down the street and you saw someone drop their wallet, you would pick it up and give it back to them because it's completely obvious that that belongs to the person that just dropped it. Well, it's obvious to almost everyone. For Wesley, it apparently wasn't so obvious. Wesley had just been arrested and was in the process of being booked into jail. A part of that process is a strip search and a body cavity search. At some point, Wesley pulled out 3 syringes from his bum and handed them over to authorities. He was claiming that he had just found them. They were in no way his, and he had no idea how these syringes got in his bum in the first place. Yeah, apparently that wasn't enough because everyone knew that they belonged to him, and as a result, some additional charges were added to the list. Now, it doesn't say he was under the influence of anything, but I'm not 100% sure on this because who would believe a story like that after watching someone take someone out of their bum? A man walks into a strip club with a cat. Please tell me you haven't heard this one before. Well, shocker! It's not a joke. It's real life. Everett was in a similar boat to our alligator duo from earlier in the video, but at least those two had each other and the alligator. Everett had no sidekick, so he decided to bring the best wingman he knew with him to the club, his cat. I am honestly surprised his cat put up with all this nonsense. So, Everett had picked out the perfect club and decided it was time for the two to go on in. There was no way he was getting turned down tonight. There was one problem with his plan: the bouncer. Yeah, he wasn't so sure about a cat in the nightclub, as many people would be. So Everett and his cat were turned down. Only not by a woman, by the bouncer. Everett was so irate about this that he decided to call 911. Cops arrived, more than likely had a chuckle, and promptly arrested Everett for misuse of 911. Maybe, just maybe, if they had tried the Pussycat Lounge instead, they would have got in. To be trapped in a tiny space, I can only imagine the anguish. Being trapped in a tiny space with someone else? I mean, it has its ups and downs. There's less room, for one, but you also have someone to talk to. John and Amber were up to no good. They were under the influence of something, and out of nowhere, nothing started chasing them. Only they didn't think it was nothing. To them, it was something horrifying enough to herd them into a closet. John and Amber were now safe inside the closet, only they were trapped inside of it. Whatever were they to do? 2 days went by with the couple still trapped inside the closet when they had the bright idea to call for help. Yes, they sat inside the closet for 2 whole days before deciding to use the cell phone in their pockets and call for help. When police arrived, I can only imagine what they saw. For one, the door to the closet they were trapped in, it was unlocked the entire time. I must say, the level of stupidity on this one might just top them all. It's yet another one of those bizarre news stories that you want to be real, but it can't be real. Then again, it happened in Florida, people, and we all know nothing is too ludicrous when it comes to the mighty Sunshine State. Well, according to the Valley Report, a Florida man died in a Breaking Bad trailer/lab explosion after lighting his farts on fire. I mean, we've all been there, goofing around in our trailer/drug laboratory while simultaneously lighting our farts on fire. So what exactly happened? A 37-year-old man was lighting up his Blue Angels to amuse his wife. The ash gas mixed with the lab fumes and his trailer exploded, apparently. The good news is that the man succeeded in amusing his wife. So much so that she was reportedly still laughing, naked, on the front lawn when police arrived. The man's wife, a leading expert on the subject of Blue Angels, explained as she grinned through her freaky, baked bean teeth, "Normally we go to Del Taco, but we made some extra cash this week, so we went to Chipotle. The farts you get from there could fill a gas chamber." But she soon shifted from laughing to litigious, and now her plan is to sue Chipotle, who carelessly neglected to warn customers that their peppers caused a higher rate of methane in human farts. What about dog farts? Does it increase the methane in dog farts too? This is just crazy. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. What are your thoughts? Do you think that this is the reason that Florida man gets a bad rap? It sure is crazy, and I'm sure glad I don't live in Florida. Heck, I might not even vacation there now. Just kidding, I have to see this with my own eyes. Thanks for watching the video, Troop TT. You guys rock. Thanks for subscribing, thanks for liking, and as always, stay smart. Troop TT.